recording now. Okie dokie. All right, so hello everyone. We are the Native Woodland Trust. So the Native Woodland Trust is dedicated to the preservation and creation of native woodland in Ireland. At the moment, we have 2 nursery sites, one in Trooperstown and one in Licaro, and we have 9 woodland sites. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to be asking a couple of questions and we'll have little tiny quizzes. And if you guys have any questions, please pop them in the text box as well. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be covering the common name, the scientific name, and the Irish name. If you guys know of any different common names, then please pop it in the text box because different parts of Ireland have different names and things like that. All right, so get started. What's your favorite Irish flower? My favorite Irish flower is meadowsweet, which we're going to be covering in a couple of minutes. It smells really, really strong. If you put your face in it and you give it a good old sniff, it's almost kind of sickeningly sweet. Oh, we have sea pink or thrift. They smell really, really nice too. I actually only was smelling some sea pink earlier this year and I never smelled it before and it's really, really nice. We have some bluebells. I really like bluebells as well, actually. Oh, wild garlic. I wonder, does anybody here use wild garlic to make pesto? I've heard of people doing that and it sounds really nice. Dog rose. Dog rose is really nice. I love seeing it along just like pathways and stuff sometimes. It's really nice just to kind of see them looking over us while we're walking along. All right, so I'm going to start off with rosebay willowherb. You guys would maybe see this while you're driving along. It'll be on the side of roads and stuff quite frequently. So these have really bright pink flowers that kind of grow in a cone and they come to a big point at the top. These are very tall. Some of them are taller than me. So you might find them in woodlands, in roadsides, in heathland, and in waste ground. And they produce these fluffy white seeds. So they kind of make these long seed pods and then they split open. And then all these fluffy white seeds are released. And if you're walking along and you're wearing lip balm, they'll stick to your lip balm. And it's pretty irritating having a load of seeds stuck to your lips. But anyway, so these are perennial plants. So that means that they grow year on year. So if you see them in one place one year, more than likely you're going to see them again the following year. And now we have a plant. Just checking if anybody is having any problem with the audio or the presentation or anything, please let me know. Just before we continue. Okay, so here we have great willow herb. So this is quite similar to, oh, thank you for letting me know. Perfect. So great willow herb looks quite similar to rosebay willow herb. They have very pink flowers, they're very tall. Loads of these are much taller than I am. And the flowers, they kind of come, they go boop, up at the top, but they don't grow into a point the way rosebay willow herb does. And they also grow in slightly different habitats. So these plants, they will grow along streams or rivers or lake and pond margins. And the picture on the top right there, that was all taken along a river. And these have a distinguishing feature in that the leaves have backward pointing lobes that clasp the stem. So the leaves, they kind of go whoop around the stem. Okay, next we have bramble. So if you can see the scientific name, that's the second one there. So that's Rubus fruticosus, and then AGG, that stands for aggregate. So there are loads and loads of different kinds of groups of brambles, and they're all just kind of lumped together in one because people aren't bothered going around and identifying them all because it takes a lot of work. Pollinators absolutely love bramble. If you stand beside a bush on a nice sunny day and you wait around, more than likely you're going to see some bumblebees bumbling around. They're really, really good. So if you have a look at the picture on the right, you can see that there are 5 leaflets. So this whole thing is one leaf. This is a palmately compound leaf. So palmate, like your hand, It has 5 lobes that come out like that, like a hand. And in this instance, the flowering part of the plant produces 3 to 5 oval leaflets, or if it's only the growing part of the plant or the vegetative part of the plant, it can produce 5 to 7 leaflets. These have pretty white flowers. Sometimes they can be tinged pink a little bit. They'll grow in hedgerows, railway tracks, scrub. And does anybody know what fruit is produced by the bramble? Kind of purple. Maybe you'd pick some, put it in a pie or put it in your porridge. Yeah, blackberries. Okay, now we're on to my favorite flower. This is meadowsweet. So you might see meadowsweet growing along roadsides as well when you're driving around, the same way that you'd see the rose bay willow herb and the great willow herb. Just kind of like a flash of white or kind of creamy yellow. They smell really nice, and they're a member of the rose family. They have these dark green leaves and these reddish stems, and these big clusters of white or yellow flowers. And you can find them on damp waysides, meadows, marshes, and woodland. And they contain a chemical used to produce a common painkiller. And this chemical is also found in willow. Can anyone guess what this painkiller is? If anybody has done first aid, you'd be advised to give this painkiller if someone is having a heart attack. Yeah, we have it right, aspirin. So it contains salicylic acid, which is extracted from willow, because willow is a little bit bigger than a little meadowsweet. Good stuff, well done. Okay, and here we have foxglove. You guys are probably quite familiar with foxglove. They have these lovely purple bells that come out. They're poisonous. Apparently you have to eat quite a lot of them if you're to get any adverse effects, but please don't eat them. So these flowers, they produce their flowers in the second year of their growth. So in the first year, they just produce leaves. Their first year is a vegetative stage. And then their second year, they produce the flowers and the seeds. So this is the reproductive stage. And then after that, the plant dies off and then they grow up from another seed. So that's the definition of a biennial plant. Does anyone know any facts about foxgloves? Maybe the scientific name would give you a clue. So the genus name here is digitalis, and digitalis is used to treat heart disease. So meadowsweet and foxglove have quite a lot in common in that sense, I guess. Okay, so now we are on to self-heal. So I really like these little plants. I would have walked over them quite a lot and not really taken any notice until I got an ID sheet and I was wandering around, and I suddenly started seeing them everywhere in the grass. So you'll see them in grassy places, in woodland, and in waste ground. And if you have a look at the bottom right corner, I know it's a little bit blurry, but you can see that they have oval diamond-shaped leaves. They can grow up to about 20 centimeters apparently, but I have only seen them really, really short because they adapt to when they're in areas that are mown quite a lot. And they have really densely packed purple flowers. And if you're not wandering around looking straight down at the ground while you're walking, you would easily overlook them, but they're very, very nice. Okay, so here we have clover. I haven't specified a particular kind of clover because there are lots of different kinds of clover. So as you can see, they have all of these little purple streaks. Each of those is an individual flower. They're absolutely packed with good things that are really beneficial for pollinators. So clover is really, really important for pollinators. There are lots of different kinds of clover. So you have red clover, like it's in pictures, or you have white clover, which is quite white. They have 3-lobed leaves. You can see lots of these leaves on the left. With the 3 lobes, they have the quite smooth edges, and they have a little crescent shape in those. The kind of spiky leaves in that picture, I think they're some kind of buttercup. Clover, it's a member of the pea family. So they have a relationship with bacteria, so that the bacteria takes the nitrogen out of the air, and then it converts it into a form of nitrogen that can be used by plants. So benefit not only the clover or other pea plants, but it can benefit all of the other plants in the area as well. And can anybody think of what might be lucky about a clover? So usually the leaves have 3 lobes. But if we were, if we were to find a 4-leaf clover, we'd be like, yes, this is the best. I'm so lucky now. Okay, so next we are on to speedwells. So there are a few different kinds of speedwells. If you see teeny weeny tiny little flowers that are blue or purple with 4 petals, then maybe it's a speedwell. And there are lots of different types of speedwell. So you can have germander speedwell, common field speedwell, wood speedwell, and the names of these kind of give you an indication of what kind of habitat you might find them in. And these teeny weeny flowers can range from 6 millimeters across up to 12 millimeters across, and this depends on the species. So here we have yarrow. And the scientific name here is Achillea millefolium. And the millefolium means many leaves. And if you have a look at the picture on the right, you can see, I used to think that it looks quite like feathers. Their leaves are very kind of feather looking, and that's a really good way to identify them. Once you kind of get your eye into what those leaves look like, you're not going to mistake it after that. So these plants can grow up to about 50 centimeters tall. They usually have white or yellow flowers in big bunches like this. Occasionally they're pink. And the plant is quite aromatic. So if you were to pick up a leaf and smoosh it up in your hands and give it a good sniff, then it smells quite strong. Okay, so here we have vetch. Bees love vetch. I have seen so many vetch plants, and there's always a bee on it. So vetch is part of the pea family. They have pretty purple or pink flowers. Many of them have tendrils at the end of their leaf stalk that they wrap around plants, or they wrap around railings or things like that, and they use them to climb up. Sometimes you might see on top of a bush or something these pretty purple flowers, and they're probably some kind of vetch that have just climbed up to use the sunlight. And some of the kinds of vetch we have are common vetch, bush vetch, and bitter vetch. Here we have tormentil. So we have 2 kinds of tormentil. We have just tormentil and trailing tormentil. And if you have a look at the picture on the right, you can see this lovely yellow flower. They usually have 4 petals. Sometimes they have 5 petals, and they have a little notch in the end of the petal, which I think looks like little love hearts. So that's a really good identifying feature. They also have these lobed leaves that are quite pointy at the end, and you can find them in grassy places, in meadows, in bogs, heaths, woodland, coastal grassland, and paths. I've often seen them while walking in the Wicklow Hills and things like that. Okay, so here we have gorse. I'm not sure if you're fond of gorse or not. In Dalkey Quarry, when people are rock climbing, people use them as anchors. So they'd like tie their rope around a gorse bush or a couple of gorse bushes, and that's how people will keep themselves safe. Gorse bushes are really important for biodiversity. There's always going to be a gorse bush in flower somewhere. So these 2 pictures, they were taken at the same time. The picture on the left, the gorse bush has gone to seed, And the picture on the right, the gorse bush is just coming into flower. They were in different areas, but it just goes to show that if maybe a pollinator was to fly a little bit further, that they would still find something that's in flower. They're very, very prickly. If you've ever walked into one, or if you've ever sat on it, you will know about it. And they make these really cool pop sounds. So the seed pod, when it's like dry or hot, goes pop, and then it scatters the seeds really far. Does anyone know what animal is being brought to Howth Head to manage the gorse and its associated fire risk? Yeah, we have 2 votes for goats. That is it exactly. As you guys probably know, there have been lots of fires for ages on Howth Head this summer. I imagine it was pretty unpleasant for anybody who was living there. So yeah, goats are being brought in to munch away on the gorse to hopefully manage it, and maybe there'll be fewer fires, or no fires would be the best outcome. Okay, so let's go one at a time for our quiz. We can start with the one on the left. So if you guys want to write your answer in the chat box. So the plant on the left, it has 3 lobed leaves. It has loads of little pink flowers together. If you were to find one that has 4 leaves or 4 lobes, it'd be super lucky. Okay, I think everyone, there's a consensus here that this is clover. Yeah, good stuff. Oh, red clover. Oh, we're so specific. Well done. Okay, so we can move on to the picture in the middle. This plant, pretty tall generally. At the end where the flowers go, it comes to a point. It has very pink flowers. You might find it along roadsides if you're driving along the countryside. Yeah, so we have a vote for willow herb. So this is rosebay willow herb, the one that comes to the big point, the conical point with the flowers. That is rosebay willow herb, or fireweed. Yeah, that is another name for rosebay willow herb. Cool. Well done for throwing in that other common name. Okay, so now we'll move on to the picture on the right. So this is, it smells really nice. It has reddish stems. It has dark green leaves. And you might see it on roadsides as well. People are having a not argument in the chat. Okay, so it looks like we have a consensus for meadowsweet here. Smells really good. Recommend you stick your face in some if there are no nettles nearby or other things. Be careful where you put your face. Cool. Well done, everybody. Whoops, I just made the chat box a bit weird. Okay. So I would love to know what your favorite tree is. My favorite tree is the hawthorn tree. There is this place in Hollywood in Wicklow. I can't remember what it's called, but there's this lovely valley and there are loads of lovely hawthorn trees that blossom in about May, and it's just really beautiful. And yeah, I really like it. Okay, so people's favorite trees. So we have a vote for Scots pine. We have a vote for Oak 500. I know that doesn't actually say Oak 500. I assume you mean that oak can support 500 insects, which is cool. I did not know that. Okay, we have a birch. We have a chestnut. Oh, another vote for Scots pine. Okay, I think Scots pine is winning. Okay, cool. Thanks for your answers, guys. All right. So, trees were protected by early Irish law. So if you cut down a tree, or if you damaged a branch, or you damaged the tree in any way on someone's land and you didn't have permission, you would be fined. And these laws also governed what the trees would be used for. And the categories that the trees used to be classed underneath are nobles of the wood, commoners of the wood, lower divisions of the wood, and bushes of the wood. Okay, so first off, oak. What are the seeds of an oak tree called? Any guesses? I think I might have read in a foraging book that you can use them to make some sort of coffee, but I don't know if that's the thing or not. I can't remember exactly. Okay, so we have one vote for the seed being called show off. And okay, yeah, so the seeds of an oak tree are acorns. And does anybody know how many species of native oak there are? You could just guess. Yeah, guesses are good. Guesses are good. Okay, we have a 2, we have a 6. Okay, so, oh, no idea. I actually didn't know until a couple of months ago how many native oaks there were. So there are 2 native oaks in Ireland. So the sessile oak and the pedunculate oak. And the sessile oak can grow up to 42 meters, and it is classed, it fits into the highest category of trees, the noble of the wood, for its acorns and its dignity. And if you have a look in the picture to the left, you can see there are teeny weeny baby leaves and some much bigger leaves. And you can see on each of the leaves, they're very lobed leaves. And that is a really good way to identify the oak tree. Also, if you're walking along and it's autumn time and you see some acorns on the ground, then if you look up, you're more than likely going to see an oak tree. Okay, so now we are on to alder. Lots of pictures here. Hope it's not too many pictures. So if you have a look at the picture on the bottom left, this is a really good example of an alder leaf. So the ends of the leaves are never pointed and they're often indented. So if you have a good look at the very bottom of this leaf here, you can see that it kind of scoops up towards the center of the leaf, and that's a very typical alder leaf. So alder are nitrogen fixing, taking the nitrogen out of the air and converting it into a form that the plants can use. They can grow well in wet soil environments. So if there's an area that might flood a lot, you might see alder trees. And the female part of the plants, the catkins, they look very like cones. So the plant, or the picture in the middle, it has a picture of some cones, and the picture on the right has some cones as well. And they get a little bit darker the further into the year you go. So later in the autumn, you'll be able to see them a bit darker, and they might stand out a little bit more. Okay, so here we have ash. Does anybody know what's killing off our ash trees? Yeah, we have one. Yeah. Oh, that's great that everybody knows. Yeah, so it's ash dieback disease. It's a fungal disease, and apparently young plants are particularly vulnerable for it. And if you're walking around and you see a big tree and there are quite a lot of dead branches at the top of the tree, then the tree might have ash dieback disease. And apparently it originated when ash trees were being imported from mainland Europe, and that we didn't have it before that. But since it's a fungal infection, maybe it would be carried by the wind and it would have got here eventually. Who really knows? So I'm introducing a word here. I don't know if you guys have come across it before. So pinnately compound leaves. So if you have a look at the picture on the left, you can see that there's a leaf stalk, and then there are opposite. Yeah, the GAA should get behind solving that. the ash dieback disease. So you have opposite little leaflets on the leaf stalk, and this is a pinnately compound leaf. And that's useful to know if you're ever looking in a plant ID book or something like that. There's a lot of terminology. If you're going through an ID key, it's quite daunting. So ash trees are classed as nobles of the wood for their support of a royal tie and half material of a weapon. So supposedly this means that they were used to build thrones and they were used to make spears. And I think you guys already know the answer to this question. But what Irish sport are ash trees associated with? Yeah, we have some answers coming in. Yeah, so they are associated with hurling. So the hurleys are made from ash trees. Hup Limerick, apparently. Okay. Okay, so here we have a lovely picture of Rowan Atkinson. This was one of the memory aids that I used when I was trying to remember this tree, so maybe it will work for you guys as well. So this is a mountain ash tree or a rowan tree. So these guys also have pinnately compound leaves. Their leaves look quite similar to ash, but they're not actually related. Mountain ash is actually in the rose family. And their leaves are a lot more petite, I think, than a big ash tree. And these trees are also quite a bit smaller. And the edges, you can see they're very serrated. The edges of the leaflets are very serrated. And in the autumn time, they produce very red berries. A lot of these trees are planted in housing estates and things, and you might see them coming out with their red berries at about this time of year. And during the springtime, they produce these pretty white bunches of flowers. And apparently they used to be used to protect against evil forces. Here we have hawthorn, my favorite tree. So hawthorn, also part of the rose family. They produce haws like rose hips. And they're very red when they're ripe. They're green when they're not ripe. They produce pretty white flowers in spring. They have lobed leaves. So if you have a look at the leaves in either of the pictures, you can see that they lobe really quite deeply in the middle. They have kind of 5 sections, and the two lobes towards the back of the leaf. Oh, so I just had a message, someone saying that they can't see my screen. Would you guys just let me know if you can see my screen okay or not? Okay, so most people can still see the screen. Sometimes if someone can't see the screen, if you leave and then rejoin again, I know it's a bit of a hassle. But yeah, I've been attending Zoom meetings before, and generally if you just leave and return again, it fixes the problem. So back to the leaves. So they can grow up to about 6 centimeters. So they're pretty small, really lobed. They're super easy to identify once you kind of get your eye on them. So hawthorn, as the name suggests, they're quite thorny. And does anybody know what magical creature the hawthorn belongs to in Ireland? I'm not sure about other countries. In Ireland specifically. Yeah, we have a couple of answers here. Yeah, so hawthorn is known as the fairy tree. And the fairies will come and get you if you cut down or damage a hawthorn tree, apparently. So, be careful. Okie dokie. Now we are going on to elder. So these have leaves that are somewhat similar to ash and mountain ash, but these leaves, they're a lot like chunkier, and the little leaf stalk is a lot chunkier. And here there are only 5 leaflets on each leaf, where the ash and mountain ash have way more than that. And also It's kind of more scraggly looking, and apparently the branches and stuff, they're quite hollow, so you can make pea shooters out of them. I've never done it. Apparently you can make pea shooters out of the branches. So the leaves are poisonous, the berries are poisonous raw, so don't go around munching on some elder leaves. They have these big bunches of cream flowers in the springtime, and they produce these really dark black berries in the autumn time. If you have a look at the picture on the right, you can see these bunches of really green berries, but then later in the year, they will turn really dark and they'll be very obvious. And does anybody know any drinks that can be made using parts of elder? I have meant to go out and gather parts of elder so many times, so many years, and I just have never done it. Just the season goes by and I don't do anything. Yeah, so we have elderflower wine. I think maybe it's wine with the berries and champagne with the flowers, and elderflower cordial as well. I think you can actually buy elderflower cordial in IKEA and stuff like that, which is cool. I think it's nice consuming stuff that comes from our native trees, although that probably doesn't actually come from Ireland if it's made by IKEA. Anyway, elderflower cordial, champagne and wine. Yep, cool, nice one. All right, so here we have hazel. So you might know hazel from hazelnuts, used to make Nutella. When I was writing up this presentation, I was like, oh, I really want some chocolate spread. Then I went and had some chocolate spread because of this presentation. So here we have the bottom left picture, we have some hazelnuts. They're not ripe yet, so these ones are quite green. When they're ready to go, they'll turn a lot more brown. A hazel stick was said to protect against evil spirits. And hazel are quite distinctive in they have loads and loads of stems coming out of the ground. So if you have a look at the picture on the bottom right, you can see a gajillion stems coming out of the ground. And if you see that, then more than likely you're looking at a hazel tree. And their leaves, they're very, very hairy leaves, and they come to a point at the end. And hazel was classed as a noble of the wood for its nuts and its rods. Here we are, Scots pine, the winner of the what's your favorite tree? So pine sap was collected to be used to sealate water from ancient oaks in Ireland. Oh, are all the stems individual trees? Sorry, this was for the hazel. Are all the stems individual trees or the same tree? I'm pretty sure they're the same tree. I haven't seen anything that says that they're not the same tree. I'm pretty sure it's the same tree. But I don't know, some trees, they're able to put out roots and then another tree comes up from that root. I actually don't know if hazel can do that or not. But I can look it up and I will make sure that it goes up on social media. I'll write that down. Hazel. Okay, so back onto Scots pine. So I don't know if you guys know what caulking is. It's where you get planks of wood and then you put a waterproof substance in between the planks of wood and that seals out the water. So apparently pine sap was used to do that, which is really cool. Scots pine trees, I'm sure you guys know that it has reddish bark. And in particular, if you're walking along Glendalough and you're beside the upper lake and you look up and you see loads of these really reddish trees, they're all Scots pine and they're beautiful. Their needles come in pairs. So if you're beside a low down branch, you can pick off a couple of the needles and you'll see that they're attached at the bottom in pairs. And that's a distinguishing feature. Their cones are said to be slender and between 5 and 8 centimeters. And they're classed as a noble of the wood for its resin in a bowl. Here we have yew. Yeah, yew. So the seeds and the leaves are poisonous. The little red thing, I think, is not poisonous, but you know, just avoid all the poisonous things, please. where would you often find yew trees? Yeah, exactly. Lots and lots of yew trees and lots of graveyards. They're associated with holy places. Apparently, even before Christianity came, lots and lots of yew trees associated with holy places. Some yew trees are said to be sure over 2,000 years old, but they estimate in the UK that some of them are over 5,000 years old. And people can't know for sure because the trees die on the inside and they continue to grow outward. So you can't use, dendrochronology where they chop the tree or they take a core and they count the number of lines and then they're able to count how old the tree is. But yeah, we just don't know with you. So perhaps 5,000 years old. And it's classed as a noble of the wood for its noble artifacts. So it was used to make loads of stuff. Okay, here we have our tree quiz. Okay, so we'll start with the one on the left. It's a nice tree, kind of similar to my name, and it has pinnately compound leaves, and it is used to make hurleys. Yeah, we have guesses. Yeah, everyone so far is right. It is an ash tree. Okay, and now land of the ash trees. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so top right here, we have some very lobed leaves. The trees grow quite tall. There are 2 native species of this tree in Ireland. They produce seeds called acorns. So the tree on the top right is oak. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Now we can go to the tree on the bottom right here. So these leaves, they're very hairy. They come to a point. They have loads and loads of stems. They produce a certain kind of nut. So we're having some guesses for hazel and some guesses for alder. And I actually used to be a bit confused about these as well. So what I'm going to do is really quickly go back so we can have a good look at the alder leaf. So if you have a look at the bottom left, so this is alder here. If you have a look at the bottom left here, the leaf is very round, which is quite similar to the hazel. But the distinguishing feature for an alder is that the end of the leaf never comes to a point. So the end of this leaf is a little bit indented. And then if we have a look at hazel, you can see that the end of the leaf comes to quite a long point. Yeah, that's how I learned how to tell it apart first. Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful at all. All right. So I'm going to talk to you guys quickly about some of the resources. So just so you know, looking at plants and trees, it is really difficult and I struggle with it all the time. But the more you look at things, the easier it gets, and just keep at it and you will get really good at trees and plants. And try and find people who will bring you out for a nice walk and tell you what the plants are. That's what I try to do. So I just wanted to reference here, I use the Tree Council of Ireland website for Irish tree names. And then I'm going to show you a couple of the books. So here is the Collins Tree Guide, and the Collins Flower Guide. This is a big hefty book, it's really heavy. I used the Wildflowers of Ireland book. So you can see in the presentation there, it's a different cover. So Zoe Devlin put out a new version of this book, which has loads more plants in it. And then I also used Ireland's Trees, Myths, Legends, and Folklore. And this is a really interesting book. It said a lot about the history of the trees and what they were used for and what the folklore was that surrounds them. And so I just like to recommend this book. So maybe some of you guys have this book already, but it's categorized based on color. So say you wanted to look at a pink plant, you were like, oh, I found this plant and it's pink and I have no idea what it is. Then you can go and look it up in this book or the newer version. And then it's much easier to find it than if you are looking in the big hefty Collins Flower Guide. So this book is categorized based on plant families. Oh yeah, someone has the Zoe Devlin book. It is great. I love it. I didn't get it for years and years because I was like, oh, I already have this book. I shouldn't get another one. Oh my gosh, life-changing. So the Collins Flower Guide, it's separated into family groups. So if you don't have an idea of what this plant is and you don't know what family to look it in, you can use the ID keys. So there are ID keys at the front, but they're very wordy and you need to know a lot of terminology and it's not really very user-friendly starting off with. It is definitely great. It's very useful, but Zoe's book is fabulous. Which book is categorizing them by color? That is The Wildflowers of Ireland by Zoe Devlin. It's fabulous. I really like this book. Oh, their mammals book. I actually haven't. Oh, sorry, the Collins Guide book, mammals book. Cool. I will check that out. I've heard that their bird book is very good as well. Someone has the Collins Complete British Wildlife Photo Guide from about 20 years ago. Wow, that sounds very cool. I will have to check that out. I've heard the ones that the fungi ones and the butterfly and moth ones are very good too. Yeah, they're very good books, but not the plant one is a little bit tricky sometimes. Okay, so here we have some other useful resources. So I'd really recommend this top one here. So the OPAL UK Citizen Science Resources. So these are free. You can go onto this website and there are loads of different categories for the different surveys that they carry out. And if you click on the different headings, then it will pop up. So I know some of the things are like dragonflies and there are dragonfly ID sheets or other invertebrates and earthworms. And if you have a look at the picture, this is one of the things that you can print off. So it has the leaf of the tree, the seed and the stem. This website is fabulous. It's really, really good. And I have printed off things to use myself and printed off things to use for groups and stuff. I would definitely recommend that you check out the OPAL UK Citizen Science Resources page. And then our own Biodiversity Ireland produced a few resources. So they produce little swatches. If anybody's ever doing the bumblebee survey or the butterfly survey, they send you out these swatches so that you can identify the bumblebees and butterflies. And they have a couple of other more detailed books and things as well. So that's Biodiversity Ireland or the National Biodiversity Data Centre. And then the Field Studies Council, they produce these fold-out guides, and they're really good as well. I've used ones for trees and flowers and things, and the tree one in particular is very good because it has an ID key with pictures and you can go through it. I'm particularly not very good with conifers. So if you're out looking for conifers, for example, it will say, oh, does this tree have 2 needles? For example, it could be Scots pine or 5 needles together. It might be something different. And they're very good as well. Okay, so do you guys have any further questions? And also, if you would like to keep in touch, with what we're doing. We're going to start running events and things now that the country's opening up a little bit more. We're going to be running volunteer events and some nice going out for a walk and having a look at some trees and some flowers, things like that. Do keep in touch with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're quite active on all of those. And I will find out the answer about whether hazel can send out extra hazel trees from the roots, because I actually don't know. I'll put that up somewhere. I'll ask someone to do it. Do you use goats in Woodland Trust? Not so far. I'm not sure if we will. In some instances where we're growing younger trees, like we've had to put up deer fencing to exclude deer. And I would imagine that the goats would probably just be like, "Ooh, look at that lovely tree that you've just planted. I want to munch on that." So probably we won't use goats, but I have seen videos and things of goats being used to clear areas, and I think it's really good. And in a site managed by the Irish Peatland Conservation Council, they get in donkeys to manage the place because they are looking after the marsh fertility, and the donkeys are great for clearing the place a little bit. Oh, someone says, I think hazel throws up suckers similar to cobnut trees. So that'd be the hazel tree sends up tree or other trees from the roots. Yes, hawthorn and whitethorn are the same thing. Are your woodlands or nurseries spread around the country? Any near Dublin? So we have 4 sites in Wicklow. We have a site, Gurley Wood in Meath as well. And I think someone asked, oh yeah, another person asked if this recording was going up online. Yep, I will make sure that this goes up on YouTube. So that will go up on our YouTube account, and I can make sure that that's shared on the social media as well, because I wasn't actually able to find the YouTube page myself. So I'll make sure that it goes up on the social medias and things. Okay. Is Gurley Wood near Gurley Bog? Yes, it is. It's right beside it. Are there special challenges for a boggy site? I think you just have to be careful what kind of trees you plant there, because some trees are not able to deal with the wet conditions and they'll just rot. All right. Oh, I'm just going to quickly type my email address. Just in case anybody wants to email me, there it is there. If anybody wants to take it down to email me for whatever reason, I'll just give you a second. So it's aisling.kennedy and nativewoodlandtrust.ie. All right. Okay, I'm going to finish the meeting now, guys. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much for participating as well. I definitely find it's easier when people are participating. Thank you.